Today, we're going to be talking about some of my favorite players in the draft. These are guys that I would draft higher than they're generally ranked. So basically, these are guys that I would reach for. The first of these players is, of course, Brad Lambert. I've talked about him before, and I'll say it again. Lambert is or he's pretty good. um he is really good in transition, and you're gonna look at the production and be like, okay, well, he's not putting up the points. It's not for the lack of skill, in my opinion. I trust the process over the results. And he's got the puck skills, he's got the vision. I think he has incredible vision, and he has not necessarily a great shot, but a pretty good one, I think. And, he just got a little bit unlucky. Think of Atu Ratu. That's going to be the main comparison everyone makes, and it's kind of for a reason. It would not surprise me at all if next season Lambert stays in Liga and scores around a point per game, but there is a lot of speculation that he will come to the WHL, and maybe that would be good for him. Uh, and I think actually I do think that would be good for him, and he could easily score like 100 points in the WHL next season. I would not be surprised at all. So Lambert, he's a guy that it sounds like he's going to go in the late first round to the first half of the second round, but I would honestly take him top 10. The next guy is that Russian player with a funny name, and that is, of course, Gleb Trikazov. So Trikazov is absolutely elite in the offensive zone. What he does with the puck on his stick, especially on the rush, is just really awesome. But he's also really good on the cycle. He's actually really impressive on cycle plays, in my opinion. He's great behind the goal line. He has great vision, good passer. It's all there. All the skills are there for a high point producer in the NHL. However, his defense is just awful, and he is Russian. And I've mentioned this before, but there's a lot of question marks about Russian players in general this year because of global events and the general, I don't want to say stigma, but the lack of confidence, I guess, in drafting Russian players because a lot of them do stay in Russia for a long time afterwards, and you're not necessarily getting them as long as you would like. But, to me, that stuff is kind of a non factor. I mean, the global events do raise some concerns about whether or not these players are going to be able to come over, but most likely they should be able to come over, if not this year or next year, like relatively soon. It's not a huge concern for me, and he seems to be ranked, well, kind of all over the place, to be honest. But he's another guy that I would take top 10, maybe. Yeah, okay, not. I was gonna say maybe top 5, but I don't think I'd take him quite that high, but for sure top 10. The third player I want to talk about is one of my absolute favorite players in the draft who is a little bit not entirely unheard of, but under the radar, and that is Jagger Firkus. Firkus is just a little bit like Matthew Savoy, in my opinion, in that they're both small players, and their main downside is lack of resiliency, and Firkus is not as good as, or I should say, he's a little bit worse than Savoy is under pressure, and he's not as good at creating space for himself, but he is good at creating space for his teammates, and he's also good at finding open areas of the ice in the offensive zone when the puck is not on his stick. So he does kind of make up for it in that way, but his passing is not great, but he does attempt a lot of passes. He does attempt a lot of passes into high danger areas as well, which is really good to see. And I think the skills are there again for a really good point producer at the NHL level. He is kind of a boomer bust guy, so there is a bit of risk there. But if he hits, I think he's going to be really, really good. And he's generally ranked in the late first round to uh, early second round. I think he's probably around 28, seems to be his average ranking. And I would definitely take him as many as, I don't know, 8 to 10 spots higher than that. The fourth player I want to talk about is defenseman Christian Kyrou. Kyrou is a guy that really excites me. He has shown a lot of flashes of really high skill, and he's definitely not the most consistent player in terms of showing off that skill, but he has been a pretty consistent producer in junior hockey. And if you believe in uh, analytical statistical models, for example, Patrick Bacon's model, they typically rely heavily on point production and National Hockey League equivalency score. So if you are familiar with that stat, Kairos is amongst the highest in this draft class. I believe he might even be top 10 in terms of NHL equivalency score in this draft class, which isn't really a stat that I put a ton of stock in, but it is notable, especially for a guy who is likely to go in the second round. So I would take him late first round, which it's at this point in the draft, it's kind of hard to get a feel, at least for me, as to where these guys are actually going to go. But I think a late first round is definitely reaching on him, but I would do it. The final player I want to talk about is Russian Ivan Miroshnichenko. And this one is pretty simple, guys. Most of you are probably aware of this, but maybe you're not, so I'll give you the Spark Notes version of it. Basically, he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma towards the early part of the season, I believe. Maybe it was like around halfway through. I'm not entirely certain. But he got cancer and he missed a lot of games because of that, obviously. But he is now in remission. He has been cleared to resume hockey activities. I believe he may have even gotten in a couple of games right at the end of the season or in the playoffs, but I could be wrong about that. But either way, the skill is there. Granted, it that granted he didn't play a ton of games this season, so it is a pretty small sample size, and it does carry a bit of risk whenever a player has gone through something like this, just because that could have a lasting effect on his development. You never know. But I think before the diagnosis, he was pretty much a bona fide first rounder for most people, and now that's kind of up in the air. He might go late first round, maybe in the second round. It's really hard to say, but I think based off the talent he showed before his diagnosis, he should still be a solid first rounder for me. And it's kind of hard to say if that is really a reach or not, but it's definitely a weird situation, uncommon circumstances. So I'm not sure if you could really call that one a reach or not, but I thought it was worthwhile to mention him in this video just because of these circumstances. But yeah, that will be it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy it, please do give it a like. That really helps me out a lot. Share it with your friends if they're into hockey. That would be pretty awesome as well. And I'll put another video right here in the top right hand corner of your screen. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and click on it. That would really help me out as well. And all that being said, have a nice day.